I was sweating as I set up the camera in the teacher's lounge. Even though my best friend Sophia was watching the door, I had a sick feeling that we were going to get caught. "Hurry up," Sophia whispered. I fumbled with the camera, hiding it behind a pile of files. Then we got out of there as quickly as possible. No one was in sight. Sophia and I giggled as we ran away. "I can't wait to see what happens," she said. Have you ever had a teacher you just couldn't stand? Well, that's what it was like with Sophia and Miss Talbert. Since the start of the year, Miss T has been a real pain to Sophia, and by extension, me. She was so stuck up. Even the way she walked was annoying, like she had a stick up her butt. So when Sophia and I got stuck with her for the whole year, we pretty much knew it was game over. One day, Miss T showed up to school wearing a pink jumpsuit that really didn't look good on her. She left the class at one point to get more chalk when Sophia turned to me and said out loud, "Oh, God, what was Miss T thinking? Is she trying to look like the Pink Panther?" I tried to warn her with my eyes, but as Sophia turned back slowly, she saw Miss T standing right behind her, her face purple with rage. After that, she was out to get us. We couldn't even look at each other without Miss Talbert giving us a hard time. Whenever we had extra classes with her, we started ditching them. One afternoon, we were skipping class and watching TikTok videos in our spot behind the cafeteria when Miss Talbert caught us. She gave us detention for a full month. Oh my God. Sophia couldn't believe that we'd be stuck in school every Friday afternoon. She cursed Miss Talbert all through detention and kept saying she hated her and would get back at her. During one detention, we noticed that while most of the teachers disappeared off campus the second the school day was done, Miss T stuck around on Friday afternoons. Her car was one of two left in the parking lot. We decided to spy on her. Sophia grabbed my hand and pulled me towards her classroom. I had to admit, I always got a fluttering feeling in my tummy when Sophia touched me. Weird, but good weird. We snuck up to her classroom and peeked inside. No one was there. Curious, we walked around the school. We eventually found her in the teacher's lounge. Looking in through the window, we saw that she wasn't alone. She was with Mr. Faulkner. He was our math teacher from 2 years ago. Sophia gasped so loud that they turned around and looked through the window. I put my hand over Sophia's mouth and dived with her into the bushes. Miss T walked to the window and looked outside. Mr. Faulkner asked her if she saw anything, and then he walked up to her and told her that they needed to be more careful. I released my hand from Sophia's mouth. We looked at each other with the same kind of wild glee. We'd just stumbled on something huge. "We have to know what they're doing," said Sophia with more determination than I'd ever seen. "We have to." Finding out what they were up to was easier than I thought. All we had to do was leave one of our phones in the teacher's lounge just before detention started. The teacher's lounge was a ghost town after school on Fridays. Sophia kept watch while I placed the phone. Then we strolled down to detention with plenty of time to spare. Those 2 hours took forever. When detention was over, we raced out of there, grabbed my phone from the empty lounge, and got out as fast as we could. That evening, we grabbed a bowl of popcorn and sat down to watch the video. It was hilarious. Talbert and Faulkner were clearly in love. Faulkner told Mrs. T they should forget the school's policy. Miss T told him that they needed to be smart about their relationship and that it couldn't interfere with their work. That was when Faulkner said something that had Sophia and I rolling on the floor. "You are my work," said Faulkner. "You're my masterpiece, my inspired novel, my hit song." "That's so lame," said Sophia, clutching her stomach from laughing so hard. We spent the rest of the evening reenacting that scene, laughing. Sophia thought this was just too juicy not to be posted online, but I told her we'd get expelled if it was traced back to us. She looked really annoyed at first, but then she reluctantly agreed. The next morning, I woke up to hundreds of messages from my friends and people from school. I got up and checked my notifications. Apparently, one of the posts on the TikTok channel Sophia and I shared had thousands of views and comments. I checked my phone and almost died of shock. It was the video from the teacher's lounge. How had it been uploaded? I deleted it immediately, but I already knew it was too late. When I got to school, all the kids were cheering for me. Mark, this guy that all the girls thought was a total babe, walked by me and smiled. I found Sophia as soon as I could and scolded her for going behind my back and uploading the video. She started crying and said she was sorry. My heart melted immediately, and I couldn't stay mad at her. Actually, with all the attention we were getting, I couldn't decide if I should be happy or upset about the video going viral. My confusion didn't last too long. Sophia and I got called into the principal's office in the 4th period. We went into the principal's office. Long story short, every adult in the building was a fire-breathing dragon. Miss T and Faulkner were in the office, and they were furious. Talbert had clearly been crying. Faulkner looked like somebody had punched him. I didn't let Sophia take the fall for it. I just couldn't. I straight up told the principal that it was all my idea and Sophia had nothing to do with it. The principal freaking flipped. She started yelling about how I was a disgrace to the school and that I was suspended for a week. Then she told me to get out of her office. I waited outside for Sophia. Through the door, I heard the principal tell her that she needed to find a better friend. Hanging out with a rotten apple like me would hurt her chances of going to an Ivy League college. What came next really hurt. I could hear Sophia say, "Yeah, she's really spoiled. I shouldn't be friends with someone like her. It's already started to affect my grades." I heard the principal say there would be a disciplinary meeting for the 2 teachers as well. Faulkner stormed out of the office, followed by Miss T. Our eyes met. If looks could kill, there would be a dead Amy in the corridor. She said in a low, scary voice, "I'll make you pay for this, Amy." Before I could explain anything, she was gone. Then Sophia came out, and I could swear I saw a grin on her face. Maybe I'd imagined it because the next second, she looked pretty sad again. Instead of going to class, we went behind the cafeteria and quietly sat there. She squeezed my hand and said she was sorry she'd gotten me into trouble. I told her I felt very hurt that she had agreed with the principal in the office. She just looked at me with those big blue eyes and said, of course she didn't mean a word of it. How could I even believe that? Before I knew what I was doing, I leaned in to kiss her. She pushed me away. She was horrified and disgusted. I have to go, said Sophia. She picked up her bag and basically ran away from me as I tried to explain to her how much I loved her. No, what had I done? What was wrong with me? Why did I just blurt it out? She was going to hate me now. My parents went insane when they found out about the whole thing, and they were doubly pissed at Sophia for letting me take the fall alone. They asked me why I even stood up for her. I wasn't ready to have that conversation, so I yelled at them and told them to mind their own business. I was grounded for a week. I was an overnight hit at school, though. Turns out, going against a teacher everyone hates makes you really cool. In fact, Miss T and Faulkner got fired. Also, Faulkner had broken up with her and put the entire blame on her. I was a legend around school. I was getting texts and calls from people I didn't even know existed, and getting invites to all the coolest parties. Sophia had always said she hated those parties, so we never went, but now I could go. This was awesome. I sneaked out late at night to a party that weekend. People greeted me like I was a celebrity. I was getting high fives and smiles from everyone. Then I saw Sophia a few feet away, dancing and laughing with a bunch of people around her. I was so shocked. I thought she hated these noisy parties. It really didn't look like her first one. What is going on with her? The next day, I noticed Sophia had blocked my number. I was devastated that my best friend had turned so cold-hearted. Eventually, I figured I could use the attention I was getting to forget about Sophia. Everyone seemed to think that I was a rebel, so I became one. I started hanging out with the other rebels, and I even started dating Mark. Mark had a motorbike and barely even went to school. I figured Sophia might even be jealous. Besides, if Sophia ever spilled my secret, dating him was a good way to cover things up. I spent the next few weeks doing extremely stupid stuff with my new friends. I was ditching school all the time and staying out late. We would go around the neighborhood on bikes and throw eggs at people's cars and houses. On one of our eggscapades, Mark was driving really fast and his bike slipped, and we both landed hard on the street. I had scrapes all over my arms and knees. After that, my parents pulled me aside and asked me what was going on with me. They told me that they barely recognized me with my crazy new hair, and it wasn't like me to behave this way. People had been telling them so many bad things about me. "You have no idea what I'm going through," I yelled. "Just leave me alone." And they did. I felt miserable. I sneaked out after Mom and Dad had gone to bed to Mark's place. We were just hanging out when Mark suddenly tried to kiss me. I pushed him off. He looked surprised and asked me if I was gay or something. How did he know? He simply shook his head and said, "Lucky guess." I ended up telling him everything. I said that I was sorry I'd been pretending to be into him, but I made him swear he wouldn't tell anyone. He was actually pretty sweet about it. He said it was okay and my secret was safe with him. But the next day, when I went to school, the most horrible thing happened. I was called into the principal's office again. What now? I went to the office. I saw Miss Talbert standing there looking furious. Wait, Why was she back here? The minute she saw me, she jumped down my throat. Apparently, someone had trashed her house. You had the guts to go into my house and leave a threatening note? She screamed at me. Who do you think you are, you idiot? All my protests that it wasn't me fell on deaf ears. I got suspended again. The minute I got home, I called Mark and told him what had happened. He said she was just out to get me and was probably making all this stuff up. I felt so angry at being set up by her. Mark told me to meet him later at a party that night, and we'd discuss how to get back at Miss T. I found Mark at the party, and he told me we should go talk in private. He took me to a dark, empty hall where I could barely see anything. Then, to my surprise, he took my hand and said, "I'm so confused about my feelings for you, Ames." Suddenly, he pulled me towards him and leaned in for a kiss. I nearly fainted. I pushed him off and jumped to my feet. "You know I love Sophia," I yelled at him angrily. "I will never love anyone else." I heard people laughing and the lights came on. I almost died of shock. Everyone I knew from school was there, even Sophia. I couldn't understand what was happening. Mark said, "You shouldn't have wasted my time all these weeks if you're into girls." Then he said he was really mad at me because I'd just pretended to like him, and it was him who trashed Talbert's house. Everyone was looking at me and whispering stuff. She told Sophia she loved her, and Sophia stopped talking to her because she's totally weirded out. That's why they don't hang out anymore. I ran out of there with tears in my eyes. I couldn't believe Mark would stoop to this. The next morning, things got even worse. Someone had made a video of what happened last night and had uploaded it to TikTok. I was ruined. There was no way I could show my face at school. When my suspension was over, I had to go back. No one would let me live this down. Everywhere I went, people made fun of me. I wanted to disappear. I also realized how terrible it felt to have your privacy violated. Maybe this was all karma for making that stupid video. Just when I thought my life couldn't get any worse, it did. I got a call from my dad saying Mom had been in a terrible accident. I rushed to the hospital. While she was asleep, I cried and felt so terrible for what a horrible person I'd become. Dad and I were called into the police station and shown the CCTV footage of the accident. It had been a hit and run, and they were trying to get a hold of the driver. I could hardly believe my eyes as they zoomed in. Wasn't Miss T's car the same model? And it was definitely a woman in the driving seat, and those pink clothes looked all too familiar. Was she that crazy that she'd try to hurt my mom just to get back at me? This was insane. I had to make sure I was right before I reported her to the police. I went to her house, but I couldn't see anyone around. Luckily, the garage gate was slightly open. I slid under it and turned my flashlight on. I had to get a good look at her car. If it was banged up and had the same number plate, I had my culprit. Boy, was I going to make her pay for hurting my mom. The car was dented in the front. I had her now. But then I checked the number plate. The car was the exact same brand and model, but the number was completely different. I sat on the floor with my back to the car, holding my head in my hands. Was I just losing my mind? Suddenly, the light went on, and there was Miss T standing in the door that led into the house. She looked really surprised to see me. Weirdly, though, she didn't seem angry at all. I started crying, and she told me to come inside. I told her everything that had happened the past few weeks. She listened to me quietly, and once I was done, she said something that completely shook me. "I know it's not you, Amy. It took me a while to figure out who the real culprit was, and why they would want to hurt me." She took out her phone and showed me a few pictures of a young girl who looked a bit familiar. In one, she was standing with a doll's head in one hand and the rest of it in the other, and she was laughing hard. In another, she seemed to be trying to choke a frog. Miss T said that she had dated the girl's father for a while, and she noticed that the child's behavior was rather violent and disturbing. She told the girl's father when she nearly killed her pet hamster. After that, the girl seemed to be after her with a vengeance. She made her life miserable and was always playing pranks on her or telling lies about Miss T to her dad, who seemed to believe them. She could be very manipulative and sweet when she wanted to be. Eventually, Miss T had enough, and she broke up with him and moved out soon after. The child's name was Sophie. It was only recently that Miss T figured out Sophia was the same kid. I couldn't believe it. Sophia had broken my heart, but the girl I loved wasn't a psycho. There was only one person who could clear this up. I looked for her everywhere the next day at school, but what I saw left me thunderstruck. I found Sophia and Mark making out under the bleachers. When they pulled away, Sophia asked Mark, Does the idiot suspect anything? I just knew she was talking about me. All my rage and love and hurt bubbled over, and I did exactly what she had done. I took out my camera. They talked about how they had both played me, and Sophia got her revenge not only on Miss T, but also lame, stupid Amy. I was furious, but to my delight, they discussed literally everything they had done to set me and Miss T up. I gasped. Apparently, Mr. Faulkner was only playing with Miss T. Sophia had bribed him to break her heart. And me? Sophia wanted to play me simply because she could. She was a psycho, all right. Now that I had her confession, the rest was easy. Mark was suspended for a month. Sophia's father was called in, and she had to leave the school for good. She didn't go quietly. There was a lot of kicking and screaming. I decided to get my act together and focus on my studies. Enough drama for me. Oh, and Miss T is my new math tutor. We may even be friends now, too.